Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and we are coming to you from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank. And folks, you're connected today more than ever, whether it's your friends, your family, or your life. Renaissance understands how you bank, offering the mobile banking services you need. Renaissance also knows that sometimes you need to speak to real people with real answers, and that's why Renaissance has more than 190 convenient locations throughout the South ready to serve you. For more information, go to renaissancebank.com. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now let's turn to two great guests, very involved in business matters, small business matters. In fact, one of them has that name, Tim Fulton with Small Business Matters, and Anthony Chen. And Anthony is with Lighthouse Financial Network, and a big announcement coming from Anthony here shortly. But first, let's go to Tim Fulton. Tim is with Small Business Matters. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience today.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and you come with a lot of great experience that I've been excited to have you share. So talk about what you do.
Sure. Well, John, I started off my career as a serial entrepreneur. About the first third of my career, starting, growing, and then exiting small businesses, and enjoyed that. And then I found that as much as I enjoyed starting my own business, I enjoyed being around other small business owners. And so I began counseling, mentoring, coaching other small business owners. And that then developed into a consulting practice called Small Business Matters that I've now had, I think, for over 25 years.
That's terrific, Tim. And one thing you said there that I don't think people fully appreciate is you actually successfully exited businesses, because a lot of people don't get to do that. So you're bringing that experience to bear on the folks you deal with.
That's very true. And I was fortunate and lucky as well that I got to choose my exit for each of the businesses. I find many small businesses, that's not the case, is that they end up exiting not on their terms, but on someone else's terms, which is unfortunate. And can have a huge impact on what they're able to take away upon exit.
Well, you've been in the trenches, and you know what a lot of the myths are about entrepreneurship. Share some of those that people need to know about before they jump in.
Sure. Well, I've made every mistake possible for a small business, and that's why I guess something I bring to my clients is that experience of what works and what doesn't work. But I do find that many small business owners fall into the trap of believing certain things about small business that just aren't quite true. One of which is that it's going to get easier. That if I can just hang in for a little bit longer, this business will get easier. And the reality is, it never gets easier, and that's been documented by a good amount of research. In fact, in academia, they refer to this as the growth paradox. The belief that this business will get easier over time. And the reality, it doesn't. And the easiest way, John, to explain it is to think of it this way, that if you and I are in business, and we're the only two, there are two lines of communication, from me to you and you to me, two lines of communication. So now we add Anthony as our third employee, and now we have 6 lines of communication. We add a fourth person, we have 12 lines. So inherently, the business gets more complicated as we add employees,
Sure.
as we add customers, as we add vendors. It can't help but get more complicated as we grow the business. So that's one myth that I try to dispel with many of my clients.
Yeah, and that's important. If I can, you're not talking about just the financial part of it. I mean, although that may be an issue too, but it's really the organizational, internal aspects of it that folks don't fully appreciate, how complicated operations can get.
Yeah, exactly. Every component of the business gets more complicated as the business grows, or even if it doesn't grow, it's still going to get more and more difficult.
So keep going. You got more than that one. I know you've got some good ones for us, Tim.
There's another one that I find myth is that in order to be successful in business, I've got to be really smart, very high IQ. And while that certainly might be important, again, research indicates that is not probably the most important criteria for a successful business owner. In fact, there was a really interesting article a number of years ago in Entrepreneur Magazine. They took a group of small business owners and they said, okay, what one quality, what one trait would be most important? So the first thing they did is, it said it must be IQ, must be smarts. So they tested the IQ of each of the members of this group. And this was good news for most of us. They found no correlation between IQ and success in small business. No correlation at all.
I really feel good right now. Thank you for that. Thanks for bringing that today, Tim.
And then, John, they said, well, if it's not IQ, maybe it is their EQ, their emotional quotient, which is the driver of success in small business. And I'm sure your listeners, many may be familiar with EQ, your emotional quotient, how well you get along with people. And you can actually, there's a way of measuring it like your IQ. And so they tested the EQ of the same group of very successful small business owners. And in this case, they found some correlation between one's EQ and their potential for success in business. That makes sense. You find people who are successful or that's in business or in life, they get along with others. But it wasn't the silver bullet that they were looking for. So then they tried one more component, and that is your AQ. And again, they tested the same group and they found in this case, there was in fact a direct correlation between one's AQ and their potential for success in business. And you may be wondering,
let's define AQ.
Yeah, what is AQ?
Don't know that. Yeah, okay.
Well, your AQ is your adversity quotient. Your adversity quotient. How well do you deal with difficult situations, maybe almost impossible situations? And in this case, they found a direct correlation between one's AQ and their potential for success in business. And what they found is people with high AQ, and there's actually a very simple assessment you can take if your listeners just do a Google on adversity quotient, they'll find it. And they found that people with very high AQ have a very similar mindset, a similar mantra, so to speak. And it is, when facing a difficult situation, which we do practically every day, the mindset is, this too shall pass. I've been in difficult situations before, gotten through them. I'll get through this one. Dramatically different than those with less than average AQ. Their mindset tends to be, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to fail. I'll never get past this. Very different mindset. So people with that mindset, this idea that, I can get through this. I've been through difficult situations before. And what's interesting, John, is that there was a study that showed 20 years ago, the average adult, you and I, faced on average 8 to 10 difficult situations in any given day, adverse situations, any given day, that the car doesn't start, kids are sick, whatever the case might be. Today's world, that number is double. It's 16 to 20 adverse events for the average adult. That's not a business owner. The average adult, it's 16 to 20 adverse events in any given day. So you can see why having this high AQ would be so important, not just for the average adult, but for small business owners who probably face 2 or 3 times that many number of adverse events in any given day. So again, just another myth that it's not so much about IQ, it's about AQ.
Yeah, so follow up on that if I can. So what I don't hear you saying about AQ is that it's about toughness or something like that. It's more about even-handedness or even equanimity, if you will, in terms of the way you look at the world.
I think you're right. I think there's some element of toughness. There was a book that came out, a best-selling book a couple of years ago called Grit, and there was a TED Talk that was done by the author, and she talked about the importance of having grit, having a toughness. And I think there may be some alignment between that and this adversity quotient, but I think there's more to it than that as well. I think you're right.
Gotcha. Okay. Keep going. This is great.
Sure. So, another one is that we just assume that small business owners, entrepreneurs, are risk takers. Some people would say crazy, but we tend to think of them as risk takers because they're willing to start this whole new venture and and borrow money and hire people not knowing if they're going to be successful or not. But when they survey entrepreneurs, what they find is something very different. They find that most entrepreneurs, they don't see themselves as risk takers. They see themselves as opportunists. They see an opportunity in the market. They see something that no one else is doing, and they can't figure out why. Why would we not all want to start this business in this market serving this audience? So they do it. They start a business, and again, they don't see themselves as risk takers. They see themselves as opportunists, which allows them to maybe not take on the stress that risk takers, would naturally take on, and in some cases be as successful as they are. Not so much risk takers, more opportunists.
Yeah. Wow. Tim Fulton with Small Business Matters. You've given me about 18 follow-up questions that I'm going to try to cram into the next few minutes here. But I'd like to, I guess, go back just briefly, if I can, to the adversity quotient. So is that something that you advise would-be entrepreneurs to test themselves for?
Oh, yeah. I think that would be a very good idea to test themselves ahead of time, just so they have, like almost any type of behavioral assessment, just so they have some sense of their makeup, how they're wired, before they go into the business. And if they take the assessment and find that it's terribly low, then that might be a warning signal. It may not say, hey, don't do it, but at least do it knowing that you may struggle when it comes to adversity.
Now, small business owners are known for not wanting to, let's say, outsource a lot of things, right? And leverage their own time. Is that one of the key factors you find that keeps small businesses from growing like they should, or are there other things that we ought to know about?
There are other factors, but John, that's a really important one. There's a study that found that only 4% of all small businesses ever get past $1 million in revenue. $1 million in revenue. So for any of your listeners, if your annual revenue is more than $4 million, you're in the 4% club. And then they studied,
or more than 1 million.
More than $1 million in revenue.
Okay.
You're in the 4%
club. Wow.
And then they looked at that and said, okay, so what's going on? There's almost like this barrier to growth that shows up for small businesses at about $1 million in annual revenue. So they studied that to say, okay, what's going on there? And what they found, the biggest issue is it's a leadership issue, and specifically it's about delegation. You have the founder of the business is when they start the business, they're able to take on a variety of different roles, right? They're the chief sales officer, the chief financial officer, the chief marketing officer, all the C hats, they're wearing them, right? And some of them can do that for a period of time. But what they found is when a business gets to about $1 million in annual revenue, it gets to a point where it's very hard to take on those roles. And the successful founders are willing to delegate. They're willing to hire an operational person. They're willing to hire their first salesperson, even though they know no one can do it as well as they can. They understand for that business to grow, to bust through that $1 million barrier, they've got to be willing to hand off certain responsibilities within that business that either they're not really good at, or they just need to find someone else to do it so that they can do what they're really good at. And I find for many business owners, it's really hard to hire that number two person, that operational person. Sometimes I refer to that as the adult in the room, someone who's willing to come in and run the business on a daily basis, which then allows the founder, the CEO to do whatever they do best, whether it's selling or building relationships, but it frees that person up to then grow that business beyond that $1 million mark.
Now, Tim, again, folks, we're talking with Tim Fulton, and he is with Small Business Matters. And Tim, I can hear a few listeners in my ear right now saying, would you get on to asking Tim how he works with businesses? Because you're blowing me away with some great information, and I could keep going there. But talk about how you engage with businesses. And you've got a various ways that you help out folks.
Sure. Well, once or twice a year, I host a training program. It's called the Small Business Matters Boot Camp. It's a program that I've been doing in different shapes and sizes for over 15 years. We've got over 3,000 small business owners who've gone through the program nationwide. It's 40 hours, 5 full days on everything from business planning, marketing, leadership, management, financial management, and organizational design. So that boot camp, if any of your listeners are interested, there's more information available on the Small Business Matters website. John, I also host a conference once a year in May. For 6 years, we've hosted this Small Business Matters conference. It's unique in that it's like a TED conference, if your listeners are familiar with TED Talks. So each speaker, there are usually a dozen different speakers. Each speaker talks for about 15 minutes on some element around mostly business, but sometimes non-business as well. So about a dozen different speakers, very fast-paced day. Typically we'll have 200 or more guests that'll join us for that day. Great day for networking, for meeting new contacts, and for learning a lot around business. So we have the boot camp, we have the conference. Also, each month I host a lunch for small business owners. It's called Small Business Matters. At lunch, we bring in a speaker for about a half hour, so they get some good content. They get to meet other small business owners and trusted advisors, and it's just a fun time as well.
That's fantastic work. So, for those that want more information, Tim, on any of these programs that you offer, conferences, what have you, let them know how they can be in touch.
Yeah, thanks, John. It's smallbusinessmattersonline.com. That's the website, smallbusinessmattersonline.com. I should also mention that I have a newsletter that we've published now for almost 20 years. Small Business Matters comes out once a month, and if any of your listeners are interested, again, they can visit the website, smallbusinessmattersonline.com, and subscribe, and we'd be happy to add them to the distribution.
That's fantastic. Tim Fulton, he's with Small Business Matters. Thanks so much for being here.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Folks, if you need help curing headaches, like Tim talked about, of those headaches might include administrative tasks, bookkeeping, marketing, presentations. Well, here's an answer for you. Go engage a smart and reliable Office Angel. They're not a temp agency or a placement firm. Office Angels matches your business support needs with angels who have the talent and experience necessary to help you maintain and grow your business on an ongoing or as needed basis. Your terms, your timeline, they lend a hand when needed and fly off when the job is done. Find out more at officeangels.us or call Chief Executive Angel S.E. Escobedo at 770-442-9246. And now we turn to Anthony Chen. Anthony is with Lighthouse Financial Network. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about you and Lighthouse Financial Network. What do you do there?
Well, I'm one of the financial advisors there, and what we do is the metaphor I like using a lot is being the GPS or financial GPS for our clients. Everyone knows how GPS works. They have a destination in mind. So the analogy I like using is that all at the destination, whether it be retirement or how in the world I'm going to be able to afford for my kids' education if I still have student loans of my own, I'm the one to show them to get there.
Lots of financial advisors out there. I don't need to tell you that. Talk about how your approach is different maybe from others.
Well, I focus very much on the lifestyle, or I preach about the quality of life. A lot of people focus so much on the returns and the fees here and that. At the end of the day, I focus on, well, what makes my client happy? What is their definition of happiness and quality of life? And when I bring that open-ended question up, I get all kinds of answers. A lot of the clients I use as an example that really motivates and inspires me as to why I do what I do is I have a client out in Long Island who is like age of 71, or actually turning 72 this year. He's still out there drag racing. He goes to Watkins Glen. And I'm thinking, I want to be that when I'm in my 70s.
No kidding. Talking about grit. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's cool. Now, so I guess what I hear you saying is that money is not unimportant, but money has a purpose. Yes. And that's what you try to get to with clients.
And really understanding their why as to what is this bucket of money for? Most people have either, well, I want to feel secure and not have to worry about daily bills, or they have a specific number in mind and say, well, I want to be able to have this to provide a better future either for my kids or grandkids that I didn't have an opportunity for. So these are all the values and quality of life concerns I bring out of my clients and understand.
But Anthony, if I pull money out to go buy a new drag racer or something like that, then that means less fees for you. You're not going to advocate for that for me, are you?
Oh, that's what I tell them up front. I would earn less, but if my clients are happy, that's my job. It's at the end of the day, a kind of tongue-in-cheek joke with people is that you can't take it with you. I have yet to see bags of money being dragged behind hers. So yes. I want to make sure my clients, believe it or not, is that they get to enjoy the fruits of their labor, which is why I'm such a big preacher, or kind of harp a little too much sometimes about what is their quality of life.
We're speaking with Anthony Chen, and Anthony is with Lighthouse Financial Network, and he's here in the Atlanta area. So what's the one thing that folks ought to know when they work with a financial advisor that you would tell them they need to be aware of?
They need to make sure that the advisor is understanding their purpose of what. It's not, again, so much focusing on any XYZ amount of products or features and bells and whistles, but whether or not the advice or the recommendation that they're being provided will meet their specific goals. And even more important before that is whether or not the advisor you're having a conversation with has a very clear picture and concise picture of what their goals or success of their goals look like.
And goals going beyond just monetary goals. As you mentioned, what purpose do they have in retirement or what have you in their life? What meaning do they want to derive out of their the remaining years they use that money for?
Certainly. And kind of piggybacking on top of the small business conversation, some of them have an opportunity to jump on and recreate or rather reinvent themselves, going into another career or starting a business they've always had an inkling in the back of their head, but because of obligations from paying the mortgage, sending kids to school, they've kind of trigger shy and say, well, I have these responsibilities. I don't want to take on unnecessary risk while I'm putting my kids through college. But my conversation with them is, well, your kids are out of school now. What better time than, I'm looking at my watch. Well, if not now, when?
Right.
Let's make the best chapter of your life going forward.
For sure. So, Anthony, we've got a big announcement with you. Right? We're going to lay it. We've got breaking news here, as it were.
Yeah.
So you are about to start a new show here on Business RadioX called Family Business Radio. And we'll start as we broadcast this show. It'll be next week here in mid-August, but it'll be on podcast form out there for folks to hear. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing with that show.
I'll be focusing a spotlight on two family businesses here in the local Atlanta area. And what really inspired of that is kind of my origin story of how I got into doing what I'm doing with my dad wanting to have his own business. So I want to be able to highlight of the family business being grown here in the Atlanta area and sharing their successes and trials and tribulations so we can build a community.
Sure.
That business owners are not just out there by themselves, are wondering in the back of their heads, am I the only one thinking this, or am I the only one going through this? No, you're among friends.
Right. And you'll have folks that are the trusted advisors to family businesses too, that have like you have family businesses as a specialty.
And also really highlighting and providing feedback or value to others listening in as well. I never ever thought about that. Maybe I should have delegation or bring this advisor along because it would actually help address this very problem I'm facing in my business.
Sure. So Family Business Radio, that's going to be coming here on Business RadioX, the North Fulton studio, Business RadioX, and we'll have links in the show page for folks that are listening to this show, so you can follow, subscribe to that show, and take a listen. We're looking forward to that. So, this is a pretty intimidating process, what you take folks through. How do people take a deep breath and keep it from being as intimidating as it sometimes can be?
Well, the thing is getting back to the original question of what is their definition of quality of life or happiness. And sometimes people actually are a little taken back by that. And that actually takes 1 to 2 meetings and really diving in deep as to what makes them genuinely happy rather than taking on the definition of what everyone else is doing. So for them to get started, if they're married or what have you, they're having a conversation with their spouse, and rather than just jumping into the nitty-gritty details of the dollars and cents, is, well, honey, what makes you happy? And try to find a compromise between them both and then work from backwards from there. So if they can get a very clear picture of what they want the scenario or the perfect win looks like, then we can go from there. But without that clear picture, no amount of advice that me or anyone else or wizardry can make that come true.
Sure. Now, back to one of the points that Tim made earlier about delegation or lack of wanting to delegate. That seems to be a problem with small business owners and their finances too, right? I mean, because I take it the biggest competitor financial advisors have is doing nothing, which is not a good strategy, right? So I had to talk to those folks that are out there and they're really afraid to go find a good financial advisor or have done nothing.
Well, the conversation almost kind of beating at that horse is finding an advisor that understands their why, and for them is understanding what they want their legacy to be, which I find most in family businesses as well. I've borne sweat, blood, and tears to build up this business for this amount of years. I want to make sure that my values and my fundamentals and the way I created my business continues on. So it's making sure that the advisors that have, not just financial, but attorneys and CPAs, that they all align on the same philosophy and the values that the business owner have. And that is the best team that they can definitely construct from there. Because without that same shared philosophy, it's probably not going to work.
Anthony Chen, and he's with Lighthouse Financial Network. Anthony, great words here. So for those that would like more information, would like to be in touch, how do they do that?
You can reach me by email, which is just my full name, Anthony Chen, Chen, at lfnllc.com. Or you can also visit our site at www.lfnllc.com.
Terrific. Anthony, thanks for being with us, and we're looking forward to Family Business Radio.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, folks, just a reminder here that if you like this show and you want to listen to other episodes, we've got a archive of about 150 or 60 shows at this point, and over 400 guests, or close to 400 guests anyway, that you can find at northfultonbusinessradio.com. We also are on all the major podcast platforms. That's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Mine happens to be Overcast. So check it out. Check us out there. We always have good guests like Tim and Anthony to offer on this show. You can also follow us on Twitter or on Facebook at North Fulton BRX. So for our guests, Tim Fulton with Small Business Matters and Anthony Chen with Lighthouse Financial Network, I'm John Ray. Join me next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.
Renaissance Rewards Extra is the checking account that checks all the boxes. Roadside assistance? Check. Cell phone insurance? Check. More than 400,000 local shopping discounts? Check. Up to $25 per month in ATM refunds and a great rate? Check. All in an easy-to-use mobile app. To open an account or find out more about Renaissance Rewards Extra Checking, go to renaissancebank.com or visit us at any of our more than 190 locations throughout the South. Renaissance Bank. Understanding you. Member FDIC. Equal Housing Lender.